And this afternoon we're going to be talking about networking. I know that many of you are familiar with that term, but it means something different to each one of you, I'm sure. When it comes to the world of job search, what do you believe is the most effective means of finding a job today? Philip, how about we call on you?
Networking.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about, and that is the number one way to find a job. Actually, interesting for all of you to note, perhaps, is that when the market softens, when the economy softens, which sadly we all know that it has drastically, networking goes up considerably. And why do you think that's the case? Does anybody care to venture to answer that? What do you think about that?
I think maybe because people are trying to hire people they know and are familiar with and know something about them.
Yes, exactly. Because literally, wouldn't any one of you rather hire somebody that you already had a trust factor with, or that somebody referred them to you and you trusted that person, and therefore you feel that this particular hire is going to be what we call a safe hire? And that is certainly all goes back to when the economy is weak, why networking just escalates. It is actually estimated that this year, 2010, we are looking to have it from Department of Labor, I should say, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics that belongs to the Department of Labor is projecting for it to be approximately up to 90% of people will find their employment opportunities through networking. As we get into this whole subject, I'm sure some of you are sitting here today thinking, oh, networking, oh, I just despise that. That means I have to go and ask people for a job. Please realize networking is not about asking for a job. It is literally just getting your message out there. Getting it to a point where you can freely and openly and quickly, under any opportunity that might present itself, talk about your professional background. But you are not asking for a job. And we'll come back to that in a little while. But please remember, it is not asking for a job. It is simply getting your message out there about your professional background and what your interests might be for your future careers. Let's look at the slides for just a moment and kind of take a viewpoint about how typically employers look for their candidates, and then how a candidate oftentimes will look for their job opportunities. As you might see and notice right here on the scale, this is an inverted scale. And what that means is the way that the employer looks for the job candidate and the way, again, the candidate looks are reverse. So you want to make sure you do this the way the employer is looking. You see, most people look right at the want ads and the internet and anything along those lines where it's almost, what they call the safer. Like, I don't have to talk to anybody personally, and I can hide kind of behind an internet and that sort of thing. And that is not going to be nearly as effective as networking. As we see here, the first thing that the employer typically looks for is what we call internal networks. That means people who know people who are recommended, that sort of thing. And then they go, yes, they have to use job postings and get their announcements out there, et cetera, et cetera. And then external networks, where the bigger world of external networking out to other people that they do business with and that they know and they highly respect, and getting some feedback and some networks and direct correlation of contacts, potential candidates from them. So this is literally how the world of networking works. In today's world, I'd like to recommend that if we really kind of look at how can you set up your networks, what can you do about that? And that is really, truly the most effective thing that you can begin with your job search today. You see, most people believe that networking are people in somebody directly in your line of work, and that is not the case. Here's something that's very interesting, and it's all about conducting research for network and all of that as to who do you want to set up in your networks. But please know that everyone knows someone who knows someone who knows someone. You see, many people believe that when they come to thinking about networks, it's got to be somebody that's in your field, right? I think you told me earlier you're in insurance, you're in housing, I believe you're in banking, is that correct? Yep, okay. Well, guess what? They don't have to be in your field. That's the thing that you've got to realize, and I hope all of you have, is to open up your minds and recognize that anybody in your life can be a network. Let me show you something, please. You see this whole circle? And you've got a whole circle. It's kind of like the circle of influence. Here it is you and all of the people and the contacts and the different nuances of your life and your daily routine or your regular routine or your whomever you come into contact with. In this particular lineup, we have everything from parents and colleagues and relatives and acquaintances and co-workers and former co-workers and spouses and supervisors. We've got the whole gamut. The interesting thing, let me give you a funny little analogy to this. Some of you sitting here today have fortunate enough to have your grandmothers still alive, I hope. And you know what? You probably would never even consider her a potential network. Because in your mind, you believe, oh, typically we all do kind of think, oh, my grandmother, she's elderly and she doesn't really get out that much and she really wouldn't know people and that sort of thing. But you know what? Let me paint a little picture for you, if I may. Chances are probably very great that your grandmother spends time with friends, maybe playing pinochle, maybe playing bridge on a routine basis. And her friends that she interacts with very regularly have children, have relatives, have friends. And maybe one of your grandmother's closest friends that she plays bridge with, for example, is the father of a CEO of a major corporation. Do you have any idea about that? Do you realize that that connection is that close? It's just connected between the father of that CEO and your grandmother? What do you think will happen when you ask your grandmother, might you, as you're looking for your job search, through your job search, that if she has any thoughts and ideas, do you think she's not going to think of this man immediately, of her friend, and know that his son is the CEO of a major corporation? She's going to talk to him and say, you better take care of my sonny boy. You better take care of my little girl. Of course, she's going to do anything she can for you. And that is how in depth networking goes. What I'd like to start with right now, before we get too far into this, is for you to kind of sit here and start thinking about who in your life would you like to, or would you believe, or you would follow up to start making these networking opportunities come to life. And you know what you might find is that some of these people you haven't even thought about in years. And so let me kind of try to ease your pain or discomfort with any of that. I fully understand, as we all do, that we have people in our lives that were very, very close. Maybe we worked together and we were so close. We did so much together. But then our lives went in different directions and literally we've kind of lost contact. But that is not unusual. That is actually very common. I don't know if you know what that's called. Those are called situational friendships. And those friendships happen as a result of us being together in a commonality, a common bond. And so in this case, it was your workplace. And then as you went into different directions, of course, unless you worked very hard at staying in contact with one another, chances are that you just started to draw apart from one another. It's not because you don't care about each other. It's not because you don't miss each other. It's just life gets in the way. Well, what I'd like to challenge you to do is think about those people too. Because perhaps some of those people,